In this week's news roundup, we start with Sons of the Forest devs, talking about how they're going to advance into the future throughout early access and the features you can expect, which include buffing Calvin and Virginia's AI, which is desperately needed. They also want to overhaul the tasks that each one can do, whether that's them helping you build defenses or fortify the base. With Virginia, it's more about her bravery, which will change based upon whether she's armed or how many mutants she's actually killed on the island. Alongside that, they want to increase the amount of blueprints you can build, what cannibals do around their villages, improve the cooking system, and they've got a really cool idea of faster methods of transportation, but they don't want to say anything just in case it isn't fun. They don't want people chasing them after an idea that just doesn't work out. So in that case, maybe you shouldn't have said that one in one of the answers, because now, even if that doesn't turn out to be fun, they will still be expecting a second solution, which is... Also with Sons of the Forest, it turns out speedrunners can beat the entire game in 8 minutes without even killing anyone. And yes, it takes advantage of glitches, but with 8 minutes to complete the entire game, I think that's to be expected. Next up, if you're interested in Hogwarts Legacy, but specifically for the last-gen consoles, well, unfortunately, that has been delayed for yet another month. And considering this is the second time it's been delayed, but we've already got the actual game to know what it's like, I think it's probably for the best. The reason why it's being delayed is because it just doesn't run acceptably for them at the moment. And so you only really got two decisions. Either you put up with the delay, or you get a game which you're going to be very unhappy with when it gets 14 FPS. So a delay always disappointing, but at least the game's out so we know what we're going to get. There's none of the standard worries of, are they just delaying it because they desperately can't finish the game, and we've got to do crunch and cut stuff out just to force a game into existence that really isn't in a state it should be released. When it comes to delays that are just interested in making sure you're happy with the product when it's released, I think that's probably the best reason to do them. Now, a new game, The Finals, entering closed beta on Steam tomorrow. You can actually apply to join it already. This is a team shooter from ex-Battlefield veterans, and quite frankly, it shows. The destruction of this is another level. All of the destruction is handled server-side, and so every single player on the server all sees exactly the same destruction, and that means they can destroy everything. This isn't Battlefield 2042, we're going back in time to when buildings would actually collapse. Now, it is a team shooter with 4 teams of 3 players, and calls itself a virtual combat game show, which essentially just means it's a tournament format set inside a game world. So you respawn, but there's also an audience, and they can change the rules of the universe essentially as they want. So meteor showers might come down at one point, low gravity environments might kick in the next. And the aim of the game is to get money from vaults to your home base. Interesting to the format though is its built-in tournament system. So while each game has 4 teams of 3 players, each game has knockout mechanics, and you will qualify from your game to go into the next game until eventually one team wins throughout all of the tiers. It adds a bit of the Hunger Games BR system where one team wins, despite the fact that it's a team-based arena shooter. Beyond that, you've got different classes which have different abilities and guns, jump pads that can send you onto roofs, and of course, my favourite system is still the destruction of everything. I think the gameplay videos of it look cool, and beyond that, I'm just gonna have to get in and give it a go, but at the end of the day, this is a free-to-play game, so it's not as if there's a high bar to entry on that one. Strange contradictions as far as Destiny 2 is concerned, when it actually reaches its highest all-time Steam player record after the Lightfall launch, despite the fact that Lightfall is currently riding on mostly negative reviews. Everyone's playing it, and no one likes it, according to that. And the reviews are pretty rough. I feel like I've been stolen from. A subclass designed as a story. Not worth it, not worth it. And the most underwhelming part of Lightfall is the story. Even the reviews that like the game say it's good after you get through the campaign and get through to the actual sort of endgame grind. But I can understand why people are annoyed. Many people have said this feels like the introduction to a story rather than an actual story. And yes, Destiny 2, they want you to come back for later seasons where they want to tell you more story. But at the moment, we're buying this. This should be your strongest point. You should launch with your best stuff, because that's what people are paying the money for. And so to come off the back of the Witch Queen into this, I don't know what you were thinking, but it definitely backfired as far as public opinion is concerned. Another week, another time, Sony is complaining that Microsoft is actually buying companies. This time, the UK regulator doubts that Call of Duty can even run on the Switch. Now, this has been used by Microsoft as a reason why they should actually buy the game, because they want to spread COD to more people, not make it exclusive to the Xbox. It's all done in an attempt to reassure the regulators that don't worry, we're not going to be anti-competitive, we're not going to lock Sony out of anything, in fact we're spreading it to more people. But according to the Competition and Markets Authority, they say we've seen evidence that large shooter games do not run as well on Nintendo's consoles due to technical differentiation. And therefore, due to the extra financial investment and compromise on graphical quality, this would not make it a closer competitor to Xbox and PlayStation in the console gaming market. So as far as I can tell, they're saying that even if you add it onto the Switch, it's going to be such a worse off version just by the compromises you're going to have to make to the things like graphics to even get it to run on there in the first place, that it will never be able to compete with Xbox, and as such doesn't actually change the question between Xbox and PlayStation competition at all, which as their entire strategy to purchase Activision in the first place has been Microsoft is a small indie company punching up against big boy Sony. Any argument that means their plan won't actually increase competition is definitely not a strong point for them. Although despite this, there are signs that Microsoft is winning when there are reports that claim the EU has already decided to sign off on the agreement. Reuters has reported from 3 anonymous sources, so again, still rumour at this point really, that the EU will soon give Microsoft Activision Blizzard's acquisition its seal of approval, and I really hope we can come up for a better name for them than Microsoft's Activision Blizzard. And there were suggestions that they might have to sell off Call of Duty in order to get this past the regulators, but it looks like that's not true at all. Honestly, when the purchase was announced, I didn't expect this much trouble to get it through the regulators. Although the more you find out about Sony's market share when it comes to the console industry, I don't really think they've got any reason to complain. Games are incredibly expensive to make, and so you really need to care about what the player actually wants, rather than what you think they should have instead. Square Enix hasn't really learned that lesson recently, which might explain one of the reasons why their president is out. They've not had the strongest run of luck with Marvel's Avengers, Forspoken, and various blockchain failures, which has led to the potential now for Matsuda to actually be replaced. And this isn't just like pie in the sky, oh maybe it'll happen either. No, it actually came from the board of directors themselves who announced the changes, proposed that the head step down so the director could currently take over the role. And who can blame them? Marvel's Avengers was an absolute disaster. If we go to SteamDB, we can see their reviews only had 65% positive, and the player numbers themselves peaked at 31,000 on September 3rd, 2020. And just 1 month later, 10% of the population was still playing it. Until we end up where we are now with about 100 to 200 players concurrent at any one time. But no, there was other games, wasn't there? They did release Forspoken. Maybe that was better. Although it does have only 56% positive reviews, and even now there's only 200 in-game. And if you go to the numbers on this, it started at 12,500 players. It had 89,000 Twitch viewers, but only 12,500 people wanted to play it. Seriously, it's like an episode of Velma. People want to watch people talking about it, not watch it themselves. So on January the 19th, it had 12,500, and a month later it was down to 703. Less than 10% of their players were even remaining, and it didn't have a good launch to begin with. So when it says here that it came to lukewarm reception from players and middling reviews, I think you're being extremely generous, and it would definitely explain why its developer was just absorbed back into the original company. If that's what you're going to make, then we don't think you should be making decisions about how you're going to work in the future. But two games isn't enough to sink a man's career, right? Surely, despite the absolute disasters that they were, maybe he's done something else positive. Well, of course, he did enter NFTs and blockchain. Oh yeah, that actually annoyed gamers as well. It says, despite all the planning and funding from the initiative that he received from the company, it's still yet to turn a profit for them. To the point where they're now relying on Final Fantasy XIV just to carry the company when it comes to sales. So although it ends saying, well, it's not a sure thing, maybe he'll remain afterwards, I think giving his track record, you can fully understand why the board would be proposing this. But for now, that's it from me. Let me know what you thought of any of the topics down below. Like the video if you liked the video, subscribe. More videos like this in the future, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.